Afternoon and early good evening to everyone present here. So how many of you, although I see very few faces here amongst the students, how many of you have seen in your last 5 to 6 years companies or people who were nobodies to people who have become somebodies? How many of you have seen, suddenly unknown faces becoming popular, gaining popularity, gaining all that attention, all that limelight? Only one person has seen? Okay, two, three. Did my question come across to you correctly? How many of you have seen people from being nobody to becoming somebody, and from somebody to one of the best, that are really acknowledged by the world over? All of you, I'm sure. There were brands that have grown from Jaipur, like An Academy. How did An Academy begin? It began with an idea. And what was the idea? Of recording the success stories and the preparatory stories of IS officers. How they prepared for the bureaucratic exams and what all inputs did they consider while preparing. Isn't it? You must have heard of Indibni. What is Indibni into? It is into gifting, right? Nitin Jain, who won an absolutely wonderful amount from Shark Tanks this season only, was also from which industry? He's an engineer from BITS, but he is into a gifting industry. Again, a person who had risen from being a nobody to somebody, and somebody with that potential who's moving the world over, right? You'll find that all these brands, and I'm sure you must have heard of Himanshu Jangir. How many of you are from Jaipur? Himanshu Jangir is the person who was into vintage car restoration, right? He had a small shop, that used to do the service and repairing of vintage cars, normally belonging to the Thakur families or, the Thikanadars or the royal families of Rajasthan and elsewhere. Now, from a repairing and a mechanical shop, he actually spread the word around for vintage car industry in such a beautiful way that he has become an indispensable part of almost all auto expos in India and abroad. So, what is happening here is that it is basically the power of a brilliant idea. When you're studying in any course, be it you're specializing in marketing or humanities or financial management or operations management, whatever you're doing, whatever you are learning, basically, is a process that you're going through. You're honing your skills, etc. And this process, if you take it seriously, you would actually become a leader with your forte. You would carve a niche in the industry. And that is what is important for leadership now. I'll give you three very beautiful examples that I came across very recently. And those were, how many of you, can I ask you, how many of you know Shrikant Bola? How many of you have seen the movie Shrikant? Nobody? Shrikant Bola. See, all leaders would definitely know who Shrikant Bola. He is basically a person who was absolutely blind since birth, right? He actually wanted to pursue his dream in science. But after 8, 6, 7, 8 standard, despite, of course, he was in a normal school, his teachers and every other person in his class made mocked at him. That why are you here? Why are you with these normal guys like us? But this person, Shrikant Bola, was so persistent that he decided to pursue his dream career in science. He was moved on to a blind school, right? A school which was meant to train the blind. He scored 98% in 12th standard. And he was all set because he was an aspirant for IIT. He wanted to pursue IIT. He wanted to break through the normal standards and make a way into IIT of his dreams. But what happened was, IIT did not have any concern. The person in blue, Shrikant Bola, a very brilliant story. If you can just listen to the conversation, it would be nice. So this person was refused admission by by IIT. And what did Shrikant Gola do? He did not go and hang himself. He did not commit suicide. What did he do? He said, okay, IIT, you don't give me entry, I don't need you in my life. He pursued preparation for MIT. He got through MIT and he became the first international blind student to get a degree from MIT. When he came back, he had massive opportunities there also. You know, you get so much attention, you get so much limelight when you are blind and you are passing out you're graduating from MIT. So he got several opportunities in America. But what happened in America? He said that I don't want a very cushy job. What I want to do is something that I want to really help people like me. Not help as in charity. You know, he said whenever we think of people who are physically challenged or mentally challenged in any way, the first thing that comes to our mind, the first coinage that comes to our mind is Bichara. Iski aankhein nahi, right? Bichara, iske pair nahi. So he wanted to change that entire dictionary of words used for disabled. And he said, I will establish my own industry. So he came back and in India, he established his own industry. And in that industry, he gave employment to the disabled, the physically challenged people, saying that this is ability. Not only this, the punchline of his company reads, it is called Bulent. Bulent is the name of the company. It says, we also recruit, we also employ able-bodied people. This is the story. How many of you have heard of Ricky Cage? Who's Ricky Cage? 3 times Grammy Award winner from our own country. That's Ricky Cage. You know, a very young, dynamic person. Go and look, Google his name, and you will come to know who's Ricky Cage and the kind of sensation that he's making. He's also fighting for protection of environment through music. Ricky Cage was born again in a very small town in America, right? And he was absolutely dyslexic. Absolutely dyslexic. He had very many difficulties in learning, in even reading. You know, the words used to pop, the words used to disappear in front of him. So that was, but he was doing well until second standard. And what happened was that slowly and gradually, he fell in love with music. But he did not learn music from anywhere. You know, he did not have a formal education in music. So what did he do? He had a piano, he had a baby piano at his place that was purchased by his father. He had a flute and a couple of musical instruments that were there at his place already. He started playing them one by one. And suddenly, and over a period of time, eventually, he saw that, you know, whatever he's composing is actually creating a vibe with the audience. You know, first with the family, then with others. Then what happened? They had to come back to India. Again, when they came back to India, they had to face the same pressure. That he's dyslexic, he should be out of this education system. You should really send Ricky Cage to a special school. But whatever happened, basically he insisted on studying from the normal school with great difficulty. Every Sunday, every parent-teachers meeting, his father, who was a very established doctor, was called in Bangalore for parent-teachers meeting, wherein he said that your son is absolutely doing nothing. You know, see the number of red marks I've given on his pages, the notebooks and his examination papers and stuff. And the father used to just smile and come back home. And Ricky Cage used to ask him that, what did the teacher tell you, Dad? He said, no, the teacher said that, you're just doing fine. You are progressing every day. That's it, a single liner and a smile, right? Then Ricky Cage had to unlearn everything because he thought that if he has to stand in the world of music, he has to actually take a formal training. So when he was taking a formal training, he had to unlearn everything, because when he used to sit at the piano, the elbows and the hands and the wrist have to be placed at a particular position, which he didn't know. He played the piano beautifully even before learning, but then he had to learn the technicalities because he had to connect to the world. he had to bring his music to the world, and he had to learn the definition and every small detail of music through that. Okay, how many of, and of course he turned out to be a sensation eventually, and you would be surprised to know that he is a dentist by profession. And how did he learn? How did he learn those mammoth-sized books of dentistry during his medical examination and stuff? He cleared with brilliant marks. Of course, he did not pursue dentistry, though he's still bringing smiles to a lot of people in the world. So he used different colored pens, so that he does not forget one line after the other. Just to see that, his memory works in the right order, he had to use different colored pens. That formula that was coded and decoded by him, that really made a lot of difference for him. Similarly, how many of you know Mohandas Pai? Why I'm telling you these stories is because you can be these stories yourself, maybe better and bigger stories. Mohandas Pai, yes, you know Mohandas Pai?
Chairman of, I think, Manipal, he's associated with Manipal.
Now he is, of course, working for Manipal, absolutely, but he was earlier with Infosys, and he was one of the top most ranked professionals in Infosys who started working with Narayan Murthy. Now we also had another speaker who spoke about this. Now what happened actually was that he was also very weak in mathematics. He flunked, not really flunked, but he just managed to pass in mathematics during his exams. But he was a very good chartered accountant. So while there was, the Infosys was planning to come up with an IPO at that time, there were meetings that were conducted with the prospective shareholders or people who were interested. What did he do? He analyzed the balance sheets almost 800 times. He crunched the numbers, and he was so aware. He was so aware of the details of that particular company that he asked certain questions that Narayan Murthy and Nandan Nilekani were unable to address. Then what happened was they thought that this person, Mohandas Pai, is really a genius because he has really studied everything before even making a decision to invest in our company. So after some time, when the meeting was over, they actually contacted him again and asked him to join the company, be on board with them. That was the time when Mohandas Pai had left a job. He had started working for a family business concern, and that family business concern, just one person from the family business concern shouted at him saying that you're just a servant, mind your own business, keep your ideas to yourself. That was the day that Mohandas Pai left that job, and within a few months, he got a very beautiful job at Infosys. Their idea was everything. The ideas were appreciated. What happens even in journalism, like, of course, I am an MBA by profession, by my qualification, but journalism connects me to all these stories, and journalism gives me the spirit to speak the truth, right? What we say in City Bhaskar is "Sachi baat bedharak." That is, come what may, because whatever other problems, there might be very nice, positive, PR-based stories that might be running elsewhere. But then you cannot just be at the surface. You have to actually deep down, drill inside, and then find out facts and figures. The same holds true for the management students also. Why? Because this is your factory. This is not your factory. This is like, what you will make out of yourself. Whatever ideas you are collecting from here, whatever speakers have come, and whatever you have assimilated is somewhere in your life going to help you in future. So take these things very, very seriously, because a leader cannot be right. A leader never starts at the top. There's always a bottom line to begin from. And this is the ground that you really have to learn and learn well, right? So when I'm talking about a very important story here that we recently covered, why I'm telling you this is that on surface, everybody will have a commodity. It is only when you penetrate deep down and you try to differentiate yourself that you would become that somebody, you would become that brand that the world is looking for, right? There was a very small piece of information about Anti-Corruption Bureau regarding a 40,000 rupees scam, right? That was something, like a bribe that was taken, some kind of bribe that was happening in the transplant industry, right? That little piece of information became a clue for the journalists, and they exposed a huge kidney racket. Okay, the time is up, I think, but I would just quickly wind up with this, that now this racket actually has its roots in Bangladesh and Nepal. Now, we would have easily ignored this small piece of information and done whatever others were doing. But what made us ahead of time and ahead of others, competitors, and very, very close to people, because it's the paid area of people who have lost their kidneys and who are actually waiting in that series for a transplantation of kidney or any other organ. What has happened? There, what happened was that we actually exposed that racket where people were selling off their kidneys for peanuts, like 1 lakh or 2 lakh rupees, because people in Bangladesh are really, having a very pathetic plight. Economically, they are in a very vulnerable position. So there, they were selling the kidneys, and here the buyers were purchasing it for 50 lakhs and stuff, right? Otherwise, there's a norm that you cannot take a kidney unless and until that person is your relative. So the point is that when we go deep down, when we investigate further, or when we try to differentiate, then we get something, that kind of acknowledgement, that kind of quality, that attribute, which will stay forever. That will become your synonym, like sincerity. If I just tell you, even if you're going in for your internships, be very sincere, because somebody is really observing you. And even if nobody's observing you, whatever you are learning with utmost sincerity, it's going to pay back in future. Thank you very much for your time and attention.